Hey everyone, Solomon here from WynnStrength. On today's video, I wanted to talk about effective rep ranges and if one even exists. So we're going to start off with like our range from 1 rep all the way up to like 30 and plus reps. That's really the window I'm going to be talking about today, just because if you're doing 100 reps of something, you're probably not doing strength training anymore. And you're probably not going to be counting all the way up to 100, you're just going to be doing reps for time or something like that. Now, if there's an effective rep range is going to depend on your goals. Now, if you're competing in a sport such as powerlifting, Olympic weightlifting, even some certain strongman events, you're really going to be concerned about that 1 rep max strength because that's what you're tested in. And some would argue that your 1 rep strength is your like true indicator of strength. And if you're in the sports, that's definitely true. Now, training is very specific, so I can't get better at my 1 rep max if I simply only ever do rep ranges from like 20 and above. But that to say, if you're training for your 1 rep max, you're not only going to be training with single reps, you're going to be having a lot of rep ranges, anywhere from 1 probably up to 20 to some degree, some extreme circumstances. Now, if we take that to the other end of the spectrum, 30 plus reps, that's looking more at muscular endurance. Now, they're kind of two opposite ends of the extreme, as you can obviously tell. So if you're training endurance, most of your training is going to be in that 20 plus range, and very little of it is going to be in that 1 rep range. And then in between, we have hypertrophy. The available data that we have on hypertrophy gives us a huge window, anywhere from 3 all the way up to 30 reps. That's kind of where I picked this 1 to 30 rep range. Now, the hypertrophy is going to be dependent on a lot of things. And most of the time, you want to be training, whether that be 3 reps or 30 reps, very close to failure. And we're talking about like an RPE 8 and above, or looking at 80% percentages. Somewhere in that ballpark is going to get you some good hypertrophy results, depending on your individual body and how you've been training in the past. So in the past, it's been kind of thought of that when you stick to reps 5 and under, you're training for strength. Anywhere from 8 to 12, you're training for hypertrophy. And 15 and above is pretty much muscular endurance. Like most things in life, it's not that cut and dry, it's not that black and white, it's not that simple. When you're training for 1 rep max strength, as I said before, your rep range is going to vary depending on what training cycle and what phase of training, what season of training you're in, how close you are to the competition, things like that. With something like hypertrophy, where weight on the barbell isn't necessarily the most important thing, it's a very important part of it, but volume and nutrition is going to play a huge part in how you create and how you build muscle mass. And then on the other end of the spectrum, muscular endurance is going to be very specific to why you're training muscular endurance. Is it for a specific sport? Do you need to have are you playing like rugby where it's a lot of stop-start? Or are you playing something like soccer where you're just continually on the go? What is your end goal for training that muscular endurance? And that's going to dictate what style of training you do in the gym. So with that in mind, those rep ranges don't necessarily hold water. So find a good training program that's going to help you pick those effective rep ranges. And for the most part, what you can be safe to say is that as long as you're training at RPE 8 and above, no matter what your goal is, you're going to start getting good results. So if you're training for pure strength, if all of your training, no matter what rep range that is, 1 to 5, 5 to 12, provided you're having phasic training, if you're sticking in that RPE 8 for the most part, you're going to be getting stronger along the way, and then you're going to be tapering that down to single heavy reps or like singles, doubles, triples to really dial in that strength and really get strength-specific training outcomes. Now, when we're dealing with hypertrophy, it's a little bit more of a wider area of strategy that you can kind of use. So you can use 3 reps if that's what you like, or you can use 20 reps if that's what you like, as long as you're training within that RPE 8 and above range. Now, with muscular endurance, same thing. We're wanting to increase and expand our endurance capacity. So we need to be training in that RPE 8, 80% range and above. That way we're really taxing the body, but not going all the way to failure, which isn't bad, but it just creates a lot more complexity with your recovery patterns and your nutritional patterns. If everything's on point, then it's a lot easier for you to train to failure. But if there's a couple of things here and there that aren't exactly on point, sleep, nutrition, supplements, rest and recovery, all of that, if that isn't there, that's where I probably wouldn't advise you to do a lot of training to failure, because your body is in that area where it's not exactly getting optimal recovery from all that stress you're putting on it. Hopefully that helps. Hopefully it paints it adds a little bit more color to your training strategy and how you think about training. Don't get stuck into the old patterns of like 8 to 12 for hypertrophy, 5 and under for strength, and 20 and above for endurance. Mix it up. You're not going to you can't really go wrong with playing around with reps. And honestly, that's what's helped me get stronger and put on more muscle mass in the past. And even to now, is just playing around with reps, not necessarily week to week, but maybe month to month or quarter to quarter. Definitely don't want to get stuck doing 5s for an entire year. Mix it up. It might help you break through some training plateaus. It might help you put on more muscle mass, and it might give your body the change it needs. This has been Sam from WynnStrength, and remember, a better life through strength.